Listen, if we even think you owe us money, you won't know what hit you. We'll put liens on everything you own. Raid your bank accounts, retirement fund, pension. You'll open up your paycheck and cry because we'll already have the money. We'll haul you into federal court and you might even go to jail. Hey, it's our job.
Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. Our experts will fight for you using IRS guidelines to stop any IRS actions like bank levies or wage garnishments. Plus, eliminate penalties and interest and reduce your past tax bill so you pay the IRS less. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a tax doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
I'd have my mom call the number on the screen. You come see me alone. We'll work it out. Really, we will.
Did you know that thousands of authors across the country have written books and published them with Page Publishing? If you've written a book, Page Publishing can help you through the process. We cut through the confusion of the publishing world to make it easy for you. If we decide to publish your book, your work ends and ours begins. From copy editing and proofing to typesetting and book cover art, we get you printed, distributed, and sold on Amazon, Apple iTunes, and in bookstores across the country. We'll even help you promote your book. That's right, we do all this for you. Biography, self-help, mystery, novels, sci-fi, even a children's book. No matter what genre, Page Publishing can bring your book to life. Call today for your free author submission kit and find out how you can be the next published author at Page Publishing.
Call for your free author submission kit at 855-993-2114. That's 855-993-2114.
Hello, everybody. Mark Schaftlein with you, and this is the Schaftlein Report. It's Thursday's edition, and we are broadcasting from beautiful Delray Beach, Florida. And I'd like to welcome back my guest from the great city of Chicago, Illinois. Tom Amenta, welcome back. Happy to have you with me today.
Hey, buddy. Good to see you, too. How you doing?
Hey, I tell you what, it's always good when you're doing a show and you're here in the great Sunshine State. Tom,
it's actually sunny here. It came out. It never.
Wow,
it was been dreary for 2 weeks. Like we saw the sun. I'm like, awesome.
What's it about? Hey, Tom. You and I have talked about the state of the presidential race, and I want to dive into it a little bit there because there does appear to be some movement. Now, again, I don't want to put a whole lot of stake in one poll. But basically, Tom, we have two very credible polling outfits here. These are not partisan polls. Yep. They're not Republican, Democratic. I'm talking about the Morning Consult poll and the Quinnipiac poll. You and I have often quoted them. Well, Morning Consult polls came out a couple days ago. Trump up by like 5 to 7 points, and he was up in every single swing state. It looked like he was gathering some momentum among Atlanta Journal-Constitution ran a poll. Trump's gaining among African-American voters. He's gaining among young voters. Then I believe the conviction came out. I mean, not the conviction. The penalty phase on that E. Jean Carroll case came out, 83 mil. Yep. Shortly thereafter, Quinnipiac showing Joe Biden 50-45. Tom, has the race shifted that much, or are we just in one of these polls where up one day, down the next?
I think that we're now getting into the phase of the race where, as much as it breaks my heart, Nikki Haley's done. Like, she's going to fight for South Carolina, and I think that her donors will let her do that, 1, to tee her up for 4 years from now, and 2, because it's her home state. But she's cooked. And so you're now starting to see the realization that this is definitely the two people that are going to be, in the race. And so I think that you're starting to see voters, especially on the Democratic side, start to care a little more, start to be a little more engaged, even if they're frustrated. And I think that you're starting, it's one of those things that pollsters always say, you don't really care about the polls right now because you don't know how the bases are going to come together. And there's a lot of sort of unknowns. I think you're starting to see that shift where I think people will start paying a little more attention to the polls. And I think that I think this is going to be a tight race. I really do, especially because of how disliked both candidates are. So I would expect, at least for me, to see a lot of this sort of back and forth or people inside of the margin of error, because you also are going to have that just dearth of third party candidates as well. So I think we're, buckle up. I think it's going to be a very tight election cycle. And I think that there's going to be a lot of this sort of back and forth.
Well, let me add a little context to it, Tom. That Quinnipiac poll was among registered voters. The Morning Consult
Mm-hmm.
poll was among likely voters. So, folks, I'm not trying to get too deep in the weeds here, but there is a difference. A lot of indications are that the turnout may not be as high in 2024 as it was during a COVID year, 2020. Why is that? Well, I think Tom just hit the head, literally the nail on the head. 65% of American voters do not want to see a Trump Biden reelection. I mean, that's just the way the
No, we
facts
do
are
not.
right now. And Tom, I'm gonna throw a little bit of credit your way, but I don't think Nikki Haley's totally done, and I'll tell you why. Some of her big backers, some billionaire backers, have recently stroked big checks into that campaign.
Yes.
So
Yes, they have.
she is fully funded. She does not have to worry about where her funding is coming through. I know one of the billionaire backers backed away, but she's got 3 or 4 of them in there who are staunchly anti-Trump, and they want to support her. So, a lot of times you and I know this. Candidates announce they're suspending their campaign, but they see the money dry up. That's not the case with Nikki Haley. So, but again, on the contrary point, I saw some polling out of South Carolina. Donald Trump's leading by 27 points. Okay. If Donald Trump wins South Carolina by 27 points, I think Donald Trump's going to be the nominee. I think he likely is anyhow. The betting markets show that, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Yes.
But she's not totally dead yet. For all the people out there who are either on the fence or just don't like Trump. So I do want to clarify that.
Yeah, I don't think she's totally dead in a sense, and I also think the billionaires are choosing to support her because it's an excellent hedge against if Trump is convicted for something, or if that is any way towards the end of this election cycle can shape it. And I think that they want to keep her viable to, at least out there enough. I just don't see, Trump was up 31, 32 points, a week and a half ago in South Carolina. So the fact that she's cut into it, her campaign's kind of holding up, but still it's 27 points. So again, cooked might be the wrong word. I just think that it's very clear she is not going to win South Carolina. She is not going to win a lot, if anything, on Super Tuesday. And it's Trump's ball. He's taking it and he's going home. The question just becomes now are there other forces at play, which we all know about, that could influence it? And I think that some of her backers are making, a strategic business decision in the event that could happen.
Well, let's talk about one other thing too, that the media, folks, you're not going to hear this from a lot of the mainstream media or even non-mainstream media, but the reality is this: it's going to be at a minimum a 5-person race. We have Joe Biden, Donald Trump / Nikki Haley. For right now, it's Donald Trump. Robert Kennedy's not going anywhere, and his support is holding plus or minus a few points at 15%. I've seen him up as high as 18, 19% in some polls. I've seen him as low as 13, 14, but he's clearly hovering, we'll call it 14 to 18%. I don't think anyone can dispute that. And my gut feeling tells me the longer he's in this, his numbers are likely to rise. Okay. And you still have Cornel West plugging in there at 2%, Jill Stein plugging in at 2%. Stein and West clearly take votes away from Joe Biden. There's not a doubt in my mind about that. I think Robert Kennedy pulls probably equally from both. Now, we haven't even mentioned the fact that Senator Joe Manchin, he has expressed not only a mild interest, but a desire to get in this race. I think he's biding his time, collecting his donors, working with the people at No Labels, because, Tom, there is a gigantic chunk of the country that is in your political sphere of what I'll call center left, center right. I mean, that is where the bulk of the American public is right now. They're in the Tom Amenta camp. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking far left wing radical Democrats. I'm not talking far right wing Republicans. 60% of the country fits in what I'll call center right ish, center left ish. Unfortunately, the left and the right dominate the parties. So, again, getting a couple of facts out there, folks. Here's where I believe we really need to focus, Tom. In a five-way race, excluding Joe Manchin, neither Morning Consult or Quinnipiac are polling numbers like that, but the Real Clear Politics average shows Donald Trump up 34-29 with Kennedy and the other two getting some support. And equally as important, in a five-person race, those 7 swing states are leaning towards former President Trump. So, I want our audience to understand something here. And we hate talking about this, but it is what it is. These polls influence turnout in elections. I don't think, Tom, polls indicate which way I don't think they influence how a voter is going to vote. That's up to the candidates, but they certainly can influence turnout, whether or not you vote. And there are some indications, again, that younger voters are turned off by this whole process. They don't want to see an octogenarian Joe Biden and a Donald Trump that, arguably is not as sharp as he was, 8 years ago. That's going to happen to all of us over a period of time. But here is an interesting nugget, Tom. I do want to hear your feedback on this. Commentary on what I just said, but also, folks, projected advertising spending on this presidential election, Tom, it's a mind-boggling $10.2 billion. That's just the official count. And half of that money's going to go on television. The other half of it's going to go on streaming and other type of sources. But Tom, that's a gigantic number. It's up 13% over the last election. What are your thoughts on, sort of these, statistical numbers I'm just throwing out here?
Yeah, so let's step back for the 5-person race. One, I think Manchin wants it. Two, Joe Manchin, in my opinion, is the left's version of John McCain. And I loved McCain. Your audience is probably going to be like, screw this guy, but I'd at least listen to what Manchin has to say. To see if I had any interest, because if I got to hold my nose and vote right now between these two guys that I absolutely can't stand both of them, and I've got to figure it out, maybe I find someone who's, still a little offensive, but not as offensive as these two. I also don't know if he has, frankly, enough name recognition and a name awareness, and if he can build it enough. I think that that's what No Labels and some of these other center organizations, center left or center right, are trying to figure out about him, if they can boost him up high enough in the average American's conscious. Because you and I are nerds about this. We pay attention. We're always looking at it. The average American isn't. The average American has no idea who Joe Manchin is, and has no idea that he's the guy from West Virginia that's leading the Senate. So I think that's going to be the issue there. I agree with you on West. I agree with you on Stein. They're absolutely taking away from Biden. And it does seem like Kennedy is about splitting that down the middle, which is a problem for Biden, because it's always a more complicated thing to stitch together on the left than it is the right. And he's going to lose facets of it. As far as the money, dude, I'm in the wrong business this year. And I think it also shows how, if you don't have a candidate that you like, right? Or, you don't have a candidate that's really resonating, and neither Biden or Trump is really resonating and is very, very disliked. You got to come up with some way to get the message out. You got to come up with some way to try and pump them up or tear the other guy down. And, this is it. What I was shocked, though, was that it's half on TV ads. And the reason is that, network is dying. That's the general consensus. But I think that it also shows that it's an older demo that's still watching it. And I think that is what both parties are going to try and get. Like you said, the youth seem disenfranchised. And I think they're going to try and rally, the 40 plus in their base to get them out. And the way you do that is to spend spend $5 billion plus on TV ads.
Yeah, and it is going to be interesting to see how it all shakes itself out, Tom, because again, I go back to what I'm saying. In a five-way race, folks, the betting markets. Now, I don't mean to be imitating Brit Hume on election night because Brit's known to talk about that. But the betting markets, and he was wrong a couple times actually, but the betting markets are showing Trump with about a 5 to 8 point lead. Pick your poll of the day in the betting markets in a 5-way race. Why do I quote that?
Mhm.
Betting markets are usually pretty accurate, Tom, but this one, there are so many variables out there that are happening, and we're going to get into it after our break. We're going to break for 60 seconds, come back, and then we're going to talk to you about some of these issues that are driving this election and what policies both sides are campaigning.
When I grow up, I want to work for a woke company, like super woke.
When I grow up,
I want to be hired based on what I look like.
Rather than my skills.
I want to be judged
By my political beliefs. I want to get promoted.
based on my chromosomes. When I grow up,
I want to be offended
By my coworkers.
and walk around the office
On eggshells.
and have my words policed.
By HR. Words like
Grandfather.
peanut gallery. Long time no see.
no can do.
When I grow up,
I want to be obsessed with emotional safety
And do workplace sensitivity training.
all day long. When I grow up, I want to climb the corporate ladder.
just by following the crowd.
I want to be a conformist.
I want to weaponize my pronouns. What are pronouns?
It's time to grow up and get back to work. Introducing the #1 woke-free job board in America, redballoon.work.
Tom, every time I see that Red Balloon commercial, it makes me smile. I'm just so happy for the folks at Red Balloon. I thank them for sponsoring our show, and I still say, whether it's on streaming or TV, that's the best commercial out there right now. Listen, all right, Tom, the election is going to be decided right now. The two predominant issues are immigration and the economy, and they seem to be flip-flopping from one week to the next. But let's talk about them, from your perspective. Immigration, man, I got to tell you something. The Biden administration, it's like sticky gum, whatever you want to say. These issues on immigration are sticking to Joe Biden. He is getting the lion's share of the blame, as he rightfully should. When a president of the United States comes out and says, I've done all I can on the border, I can't do anything else, my hands are tied. Tom, that's just not true, and the American public aren't buying it. Your thoughts on why is he saying something like that?
I think that the way I interpret his comment was more to the logjam in Congress, which on the other side of this, I'm sorry, but if you can get a bipartisan bill done, I don't care about the presumptive nominee of the other party. It really bothered me that the news reports came out that Trump wants to kill the deal, even though it's a good deal, just because he doesn't want Biden to quote unquote get a win. Because he's still not going to. It's still a mess down there. It's porous. It's not doing anything. It deserves to stick to him, like the tar that you mentioned. I took that comment though more in line with him expressing frustration and sort of doing that passive aggressive thing he likes to do by taking a pot shot at the process in Congress and at the House especially.
Well, let's take a look at it real quick, because I've heard the stories about Trump wanting to kill the bill, but honest to goodness, we haven't seen the bill yet. No one in the House has seen it. It's in a very tight-knit group in the Senate. Tom, just forget it's Republican, Democrat. Why are they waiting so much? I mean, what are they looking to accomplish by holding this bill hostage where nobody can see it?
My gut, and I do have some friends in Washington, but I have not heard anything on this. But my gut is that the Republican side is trying to, one, read the temperature of the voting bloc in the public, to try and figure out where Trump really stands past not wanting to give Biden a W. And then also I think that they're back channeling to, the House, because that margin has gotten even slimmer now. I think it's down to 5 as far as the Republicans. So it's one of those things too where I think that they're trying to figure out which way the wind is blowing on a ton of things for this. And I think that's part of where it is, because once this comes out, it turns into a fight, right? I mean, bipartisan or not, it's going to be the far left is going to hate it for a bajillion reasons. The far right's going to hate it for a million reasons as well. And so I think that they're trying to get all their ducks in a row before bringing it out. So yes, they shouldn't hide it like this. I agree with you, but I also think that there's a level of politicking going on behind the scenes that we're just not privy to.
Well, I concur with you 100% on that. But I mean, look, I got a pretty strong sense of where the Republican base is on this bill. And while it may be viewed as bipartisan because it has support among Republicans and Democrats, I can assure you, if there are not provisions in there to stop illegal immigration, this bill's going nowhere, because the Republicans are not going to tolerate a, quote, compromise if it continues to allow illegal immigrants to flood across our border. I've heard numbers kicked around. Well, they may X amount come in. I think any amount over zero is going to be a problem. But again, I don't want to prejudge this bill. We'll have time to talk about it.
Yep.
But Tom, you and I have seen how the sausage is made up close and personal.
Yeah.
This is pretty bad. I mean, something this important, I don't know. The whole methodology here, and I'm pretty tolerable when it comes to sausage making in these bills, as are you. We've talked about it for years. But
Yes,
this one's just not going the way it ought to go if they really wanted to get something passed. All right, but that is, folks.
Here's the one thing that I would say about this is that we've heard more movement on immigration in the past week and a half than we have in 6 months. I mean, so 99 times out of 100, I would 100% say that I agree with you, and you get the patented Tom Amenta, what the heck is going on, you morons speech. But in this case, I'm willing to give it a little bit of slack just because I'm actually seeing movement. And I'm actually seeing movement that seems like something might get done, like Congress, shock me, might actually do their job. So again, I agree with you, but I actually think that usually I don't like the silence. I think that it's bad for something. In this case, I think it's actually the very rare time that I'll stop short of positive, but indicative of something trying to move in the right direction. And I'm willing to be a little more patient and give it a little more rope this time than I normally am.
Tom, you've served our country. You have experience overseas. What is the Biden administration's going to do, or why the delay in response for 3 service members that were killed by an Iranian drone, 20 some odd service members wounded? We have never heard anything about the wounded service men and women. Yep. And I keep hearing out of the White House and Secretary Austin, we'll choose our response at our pick a time at our choosing, et cetera, on the retaliation. Tom, you've served in that theater. What is the administration doing? I mean, you as a veteran, are you surprised by the lack of anything so far?
No, I'm not, because it's Biden, but this is one of those things where he is worried about escalating things with Iran. I think that he's worried, and the administration is worried, that any sort of serious level of retaliation might bring Hezbollah into the conflict with Israel, and where they're not attacking us directly, but they turn that into the proxy fight and elevate there and make it an even bigger mess than it already is. From a political standpoint for the administration, look, for things like this is pretty simple. Like, if we have identified the group responsible, and if we know where they are, and if we think that we have an idea where their leadership is, cry havoc and unleash the dogs of war. That's my opinion on it. And I think that sometimes you got to look at Iran, and at least this is just me. When you have the superiority on some levels that we do as America, sometimes I just want to have whoever we don't have official diplomatic relationships, but get up on stage and say something like "F around and find out, boys, come on." Like, they're not going to win the shooting war. It would be bloody. It would be costly. I don't really want to willy-nilly risk American lives too. Like, we can't do that. But at the same time, if they want to keep rattling the saber all the time, rattle it back a little bit. We have the most powerful military in the world. We have lethality that, would really, really freak people out if they knew just how good at this war thing the United States truly and honestly is. And it's like, you want to know what? Okay, you morons, like, you really want to step in the room with Ali? Cool, let's go. And, at the very least, push back at it.
I concur with you, Tom. And we had a decorated colonel on the show on Tuesday who actually flew Cobra helicopters, gunships into Baghdad when we launched the war after 9/11. So, Tom, I concur with you on there. Look, it's easy to break things; it's not easy to fix them. So,
right. Exactly. And again,
I'm not of the camp that's pushing. We have to do this yesterday. I'm sort of. Right. I'm going to give the Biden administration a little slack here because they've said they're going to do it. My sense is they will, and my sense is it's coming pretty damn soon. So.
And I want to be real clear. I am not advocating going to war with Iran. I am absolutely not advocating going to war with Iran. I am advocating for standing up and saying, don't think for a second that this iron fist inside this velvet glove won't belt you in the teeth if it's required. So, and I think that message is something, especially to some of these militant groups, you don't have to go to Iran directly. You can just smoke, 3 or 4 of these minor little groups that keep flying these drones at us and be like, keep it up, see what happens.
Tom, earlier in the show, we talked about the other main issue is the economy. Okay. We still got low unemployment number. The S&P 500 still near an all-time high. We're seeing cracks in commercial real estate, but that's been talked about for quite a while. But I caught 2 statistics, and I hate doing it, but I have to talk about this. Homelessness in this country. We now have 650,000 Americans homeless in this country. I mean, that's a shocking number, Tom. And here's an even more shocking number. Half of Americans, Tom, are not prepared if they got hit by $1,000 emergency expense. And fully almost 2/3 of Americans can only cover 1 month's worth of living expenses if something were to happen to their income. Tom, those are not winning numbers for an administration that touts 3.7 unemployment, a record stock market, and, arguably, even from some conservative commentators, the Federal Reserve's done a pretty good job so far on this, quote, no landing or soft landing. So,
yes.
How do you square that?
Look, I mean, like as of the time that we're filming this, and I know this is going to go on later, the S&P is on track to break a record again today. It's up almost a full point, which, if you know anything about this, like we both do, that's monstrous for a day. I think that part of this homelessness really boils down to the immigration problem. You have so many people coming over the border, and especially, we see it all the time here in Chicago. There are tens of thousands at this point of migrants. And one of the big topics here in Chicago is whether or not we are going to allow those people to stay in shelters more than 60 days. It's a monster issue here. So I think that's part of that. And then as far as the difficulty with expenses, I always start with, like, we've got to do a better job of teaching financial literacy in this country to start off with. But secondly, it just shows that, that middle America is continually getting squeezed, and that's something the administration needs to address. And as we can see, look, you and I are very lucky in life. We work very hard. We're doing very well. But it's a reminder of just how many people in America aren't, and that's something the administration needs to address.
Well, in the closing comment, Tom, I want, again, thank you for joining me today. But my closing comment is this. We need to do something to address these problems because crime is increasing, homelessness is increasing, and the economy is not as good as the administration's touting. Tom, thanks for joining me today. Folks, we'll be back on Tuesday. Stay safe. We'll catch you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend.